The Philippine archipelago has become the stage for one of the most consequential military gatherings in the Indo-Pacific in recent memory. What is unfolding here is not the routine cadence of yearly exercises. This year's drills have been scaled up in size, complexity, and ambition, stretching across land, sea, air, and the digital domain, and in doing so, they are reshaping how allies and partners train together and how rival powers read those movements. At the center of these operations is a multilateral framework the Filipino people know by a simple phrase that captures its spirit, Balikatan, meaning shoulder to shoulder. The name itself is a promise of cooperation. The reality on the ground this year has been a demonstration of just how broad that cooperation can become. More than 17,000 troops from multiple nations have converged on islands, coasts, and littoral waters to rehearse responses to a spectrum of threats and to test the seams of allied coordination when stress is applied. The training footprint is deliberately wide. Coastal defense and amphibious operations take place alongside missile defense simulations and precision strike drills. Naval task groups and air elements operate together while cyber and electronic warfare units probe the ways digital and informational environments can shape a fight. Live-fire exercises and simulated counter-landing operations are paired with humanitarian assistance and disaster response scenarios. A reminder that modern militaries are expected to be agile across many missions at once. A senior defense leader summed up the intent in a sentence that has been repeated to visiting reporters and delegates. We train across the breadth of our archipelago, testing our readiness in real-world conditions across all domains. That line captures the exercise's posture, preparation for plausible contingencies, not for textbook drills carried out in isolation. The emphasis is on realism, on pushing units to ope. Rate under the pressure of time, constraints, and the fog that accompanies complex operations. The choice of training locations is no accident. Several drills take place in or near contested maritime areas, including waters adjacent to the South China Sea, which for decades has been a theater of overlapping claims and rising friction. Other sites are chosen for their strategic proximity to choke points, key sea lines of communication, and islands of economic or military importance. Training in these environments is meant to refine coordination, improve logistical reach, and harden command and control in conditions that resemble the very places where crises could begin. This iteration of Balikatan marks a distinct broadening in the character of participation. Long-standing partners bring the bulk of forces, yet several countries are contributing in sizes and roles that reflect shifts in their defense postures. Japan's involvement in particular is notable for its scale and the operati, almost depth of its units. Other Pacific and Western partners, including Australia, Canada, France, and New Zealand, add maritime and air assets as well as specialized capabilities. The United States, reaffirming long-standing treaty ties and cooperative arrangements, plays a central role in integrating these disparate forces into coherent task groupings. The multinational nature of the drills is meant to do more than sharpen tactical skills. Organizers emphasize interoperability, the ability of different militaries to talk to one another, synchronize movements, share intelligence, and operate common procedures under duress. Interoperability reduces the time and friction it takes to turn diplomatic commitments into coordinated action, and for smaller states in the region, it provides a way to multiply defensive options by working with partners that bring unique capabilities. Live-fire events have drawn particular attention. Simulated counter-landing operations test how forces might defest and against amphibious incursions, while missile defense postures probe the ability to detect, track, and defeat aerial threats. Alongside kinetic training, cyber exercises simulate attacks on communications and power networks, and teams rehearse the restoration of degraded systems. These combined arms and cross-domain exercises signal a recognition that future conflicts or crises that slide toward confrontation will not be confined to a single domain. Yet, among the drill's many messages, none is as delicate as the question of intent. Philippine authorities have repeatedly framed the exercises as defensive and as normal preparations for disasters, humanitarian crises, or the protection of national territory. The public posture is clear. These are rehearsals for a wide range of contingencies, from typhoon response and search and rescue to deterrence of aggression. Officials stress that the objective is readiness, not provocation. Even so, the geopolitical context is impossible to ignore. China has been explicit in registering concern and at times opposition to the expanding scale of multinational maneuvers in the region. Beijing's response has included its own naval and air patrols in nearby waters and public warnings that such activities risk raising tensions. Those reactions underscore a fundamental dynamic of the Indo-Pacific today. Cooperative defense activities by one grouping are often read by others as strategic signaling, and signaling can produce countermoves. Participants in the drills offer a different framing. They argue that multinational cooperation reduces the risk of miscalculation by encouraging transparency, by exercising de-escalatory procedures, and by building personal and institutional relationships that can ease crisis management when things go wrong. From this perspective, more hands on deck and more shared procedures make accidents less likely and responses more predictable. For the Philippines, hosting the exercise serves multiple strategic ends. On the practical side, it sharpens the readiness of its armed forces and deepens operational ties with allies who can augment surveillance, logistics, and firepower. On the diplomatic side, it signals Manila's intent to be a proactive partner in regional security, willing to host and coordinate complex multinational activity. That position, however, requires balancing ties with multiple partners while managing relations with neighbors whose perceptions can shape regional stability. The presence of disaster response training within the larger exercise is a reminder of the dual nature of many military capabilities. In a part of the world prone to typhoons, seismic events, and humanitarian emergencies, the ability to lift supplies, clear roads, and restore critical infrastructure is a lifeline. Training in the same drills that rehearse high-intensity conflict ensures those logistic chains and command structures are resilient, whether called upon for relief or for defense. How these exercises are perceived beyond the training grounds will matter as much as the maneuvers themselves. In capitals and defense ministries across the region, analysts and diplomats parse every statement and every ship movement for clues about intent and capability. Chinese officials have warned that expanded multinational participation could be destabilizing. Participating countries counter that their actions are stabilizing because they demonstrate collective commitment to a rules-based order and to preserving freedom of navigation and overflight. The strategic theater of the South China Sea adds another layer of weight to those assessments. That body of water is rich in resources, sits astride major maritime trade routes, and is a focal point for overlapping sovereignty claims. Control and influence over these seas carry long-term economic and military consequences. Exercises in nearby areas, therefore, draw special scrutiny. They are both practical preparations and potent symbols. There is also the matter of evolving defense postures among participating nations. Japan, historically constrained by constitutional limits and a pacifist orientation since World War II, has over recent years moved to expand its defense reach and to engage more directly in collective security activities across the region. Its stepped-up presence in complex exercises signals both a doctrinal shift and a political willingness to partner more assertively with like-minded states. For middle power contributors such as Canada, participation reflects a broader strategic calculus, an interest in projecting presence, supporting allies, and preserving global commons in a region that affects trade and stability worldwide. European and Oceanian contributions further internationalize the response to regional flashpoints, reminding observers that the issues at stake reach beyond any single neighborhood. Military leaders stress that these complex drills also test the softer but crucial dimensions of cooperation, command relationships, rules of engagement, communication channels, and shared norms for de-escalation. In a crisis, the ability of commanders to coordinate airspace deconfliction, maritime intercepts, and the rapid flow of humanitarian aid can prevent misinterpretation from becoming a confrontation. The human networks forged in exercises like this, the officers who have trained side by side, the liaison teams that have practiced sharing information, can be as valuable as any platform or weapon. Still, there is a risk that the very visibility that builds deterrence for some can create anxiety for others. And the optics of carrier groups, amphibious task forces, and allied warplanes operating in proximity to disputed waterways may be read as a sharpening of alliances. Whether that perception deters aggression or hardens rival strategies depends on how carefully political and military leaders handle the narrative and pursue avenues of diplomacy alongside capability. Demonstrations, and so the drills remain a two-track exercise in preparation and persuasion. On one track, soldiers, sailors, air crews, and cyber specialists run through scenarios that test their ability to defend, to assist, and to coordinate. On the other, governments manage messaging and diplomacy to emphasize defensive intent while calibrating the risks of escalation. Success in either track requires attention to both the technical rigors of modern warfare and the delicate art of strategic communication. As the exercises reach their conclusion, questions persist. Will the heightened level of multinational training reduce the likelihood of clashes by improving coordination and deterrence, or will the increased presence and high-profile activities accelerate a security dilemma that pushes rival powers to respond in kind? The answer will not be delivered in a single test. It will be written in subsequent choices. How forces are deployed after the exercises, how leaders engage in DI, log, and whether transparency measures and crisis management channels are strengthened. For the troops who have stood shoulder to shoulder in the heat, wind, and salt spray of this year's maneuvers, the immediate lessons are tangible. Better radio discipline, clearer joint procedures, and a sense of what it takes to operate in a contested archipelago. For policymakers, the lessons are strategic and ambiguous, greater capability and clearer partnerships, yes, but also a renewed imperative to pair military readiness with diplomacy that reduces misreading and opens pathways for de-escalation. In the end, Balikatan, shoulder to shoulder, is both a practical exercise in interoperability and a test of how states manage the interplay between cooperation and competition. It is a reminder that in a region of immense opportunity, security cannot be taken for granted, that deterrence and dialogue must go hand in hand, and that the relationships forged in training may be the difference between. An ineffective response to crisis and a slide into confrontation. As forces withdraw from the shores and decks where they trained, the world will continue to watch not only the movements of ships and aircraft, but the diplomatic steps that follow. The balance struck in those weeks and months ahead will shape whether this moment becomes a stabilizing precedent or a prelude to deeper rivalry. For now, the message from the exercise grounds is unmistakable. Nations are practicing to be ready, practicing to work together, and practicing to work together, and practicing to ensure that when the unexpected arrives, they will have the capacity and the coordination to respond. That, for many here, is the essential point. Military power is a blunt instrument. Its most constructive use lies in preventing the need to use it